You are listening to the Techie Leadership Show with Bogdan and Andrei.
Hello and welcome to the Techie Leadership Show. Today with me I have Susan Schwartz. She equips subject experts with tools to hone communications, relationship building, and people management skills that would enable them to become world-class leaders. Her toolbox combines emotional intelligence, Lego serious play, which I'm really curious about, and knowledge sharing methods. Her passion is making complicated concepts simple and enjoys her work as an adjunct instructor at UC Berkeley and UC Santa Cruz. She is the author of Creating a Greater Whole, a project manager's guide to becoming a leader, and co-author of Turning Ideas into Impact, Insights from Silicon Valley Consultants. Hi, Susan.
Hello, how are you? Good,
I'm good.
good.
Great.
I look forward to meeting you in person
Yeah.
one day.
Me too. If you ever come to Romania, let me know. And if you are gracious enough, I'll let you know when I'm coming to the States.
Excellent, excellent. We have a spare bedroom. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. And Susan, do you want to add anything else about yourself?
I think we're very broad and we'll add things as we chat this morning.
Exactly. I'm especially curious about Lego Serious Play. What is it?
What is Lego Serious Play? Well, it is a means of getting people to realize what their stories are and to talk about them. So my husband is an engineer, and every year they have a kickoff meeting, and then they will all have to build a tower. They give them poster board and Lego bricks and some string, and they say, go build a bridge, or build the tallest tower. And that's building something. But with Lego Serious Play, you're building a metaphor. So I might ask you to describe how you communicate with your team and your team communicates with you. So you have to construct something kind of intangible. It's not like building a rocket ship, although you might build a rocket ship and then you look at it and you'll say, maybe we are always moving really fast. When I talk to people, we're never quite sure where we're going to go. And, we shoot for the moon or whatever story they want to tell. And the key, and it's a little bit hard because I'm a project manager and project managers like to plan. But in Lego Serious Play, you don't plan. You have very short building times, like 1 to 4 minutes.
1 to 4 minutes, that's fast.
You have a huge pile of Lego and you just have to grab the pieces and you start putting them together. And it's interesting at the end, then you look at it and all of a sudden you didn't realize what you were thinking. And so your subconscious comes out. For example, when I was getting certified, I had just moved to San Francisco from the East Coast. And when I built a tower, and we were supposed to put yourselves in it. So you could build anything you wanted. And I had like a 2-tiered tower and sort of was my past life. I didn't realize this in my new life. And I had a little window, I didn't plan it, it just happened. And I had a little Lego figure that represented me. But in that window, it didn't have one of those lovely little Lego pegs. So I wasn't stable. So every time I moved my construction, my little person fell off. And it wasn't done on purpose, but I'm looking at it going, holy cow, I keep falling over. And I realized since I moved to San Francisco, I'd lived in Washington, D.C. for so many years. I was very stable. I had a network. And I realized that was the story I made up when I saw my little person dumping over. I said, well, that's me. I keep falling down and kind people help pick me up and find my way. And so that's the story that comes out. So it's very good. It's a great tool if you're working in a growing company and you need to create a strategy.
Yeah.
And so you might have people from all different departments and they all see the future from a different viewpoint, a different perspective. And so you have a chance to all build how you see the current view.
Nice.
And then you have a chance to see where everybody wants to take the company. And in the traditional way, where you get a flip chart up and people are, getting highlighters out and writing words and putting all the flow charts up on the wall, the flip charts, you all everybody's starting from a different position. Like if you're in finance, you have a different viewpoint than sales.
Yeah.
And you have different metrics and you have different priorities. And so what this lets you do is it encourages you to listen, to actively listen, to understand. And what's valuable is everybody gets to see how they combine for the mission of the company. So when you leave, everybody shares point A and point B, where you start, where you want to be. The tough work is getting from point A to point B, but at least you're all in the same, direction. You're all going parallel versus the old version where you would just crisscross.
Yes.
And then it's confusion and chaos and everybody gets angry and nothing positive comes out of it. The same thing can go for team building where you have cross-functional teams. And you need to learn how to communicate together. And it forces you to stop blaming people, to start listening, and to understand what you all have in common versus what you don't have in common. And I just think it's a great tool for broadening your perspective and really launching and encouraging collaboration. That's my leadership style. You need multiple perspectives, and
that's for sure.
And that's why I named my first book Creating a Greater Whole, because the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yes. And it sounds like serious fun, and I like the fact that, as you said, like when you use words on a flip chart, a person that's in finance and a person that's in let's say like in the technical part of the company, they might use the same word, but it has a different meaning for them, a different connotation. But when you can see it, you surpass the words. You can see like exactly what's the vision of each individual, and in a way it becomes like the Lego composition is worth more than 1,000 words.
Oh my gosh, that's a really interesting interpretation. I hadn't thought that the same word can mean such different things. And so everybody's agreeing to everything on the flip chart, but they all in their brain have a different visual. You're right, and that's the visual aspect of Lego Serious Play. That is fabulous. Thank you for sharing. And the other part is when you have flip charts, very often a few people will dominate the conversation.
That also, yes.
And so you only get to hear 2 or 3 viewpoints. And then you have the people in the back of the room that don't want to be there and they're rolling their eyes.
Yes.
And they don't participate at all. And with Lego Serious Play, you are forced to participate because you're all building together. So it's a safe space. There are agreements that everybody agrees to creating it a safe space, not to have judgment. Everybody tells their story. Nobody, you're not allowed to make comments until everybody's told their story. And I've run a couple of sessions since we've gone virtual with the coronavirus that have put us all shelter in place.
Nice.
And what we've done is we've done it with found objects because not everybody has Lego. If you have Lego, that's very fun.
You probably have kids.
Well, they're all grown up. But my son was a Lego guy, and my husband was a Lego guy.
We had kids that were small at some point.
But other times, you can get paper cups and toothpaste tubes and canned tuna fish or, canned fruit. And you can build using those. So it's very flexible.
Sounds really fun. And since we're talking about stories, I'm really curious about your stories. So let's get into them. What is the biggest leadership success story that you've witnessed personally?
You know, the person that I really hold up as the leader I try to aspire to is a gentleman who was, he's recently retired, but at this point where he really gave me a lot of inspiration, his day job, he was the chief information officer at the local electric company, at the utility.
Interesting.
He had started his career as a mainframe programmer and had gone through the ranks and was becoming a chief information officer. Now, I knew him personally, and at that point, he was also the president of my synagogue. And, when you're working with volunteers, it's very different than when you're working with people who get paid to be there.
It's a little harder.
A little harder. And in the middle of his term as president, I always admired him. Our rabbi was a very beloved man, and he passed away very unexpectedly from a heart attack. And as many volunteer many congregations, there are different factions. And this rabbi united the factions. And as we were trying to decide, what were the traits that we wanted in our new congregational leader, spiritual leader, there were many factions. All of a sudden, there were all these factions of people, and they were clashing. And Ken was so calm. Up until this moment, I always thought leaders had to be the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
And what I was really impressed is Ken never got ruffled. He remained very calm. He let every side tell their story, give their concerns, give their reasons. And after everybody had spoken, he reflected on it, and he came back and he asked them more questions. And he wasn't able to bring everybody into agreement, but I would say he brought many, many people together, and we were able to move forward as a unified congregation.
Oh, so nice.
So to see that balance where he was this very technical manager, and he, working for a utility with unions, and that probably gave him the skill set.
Probably, yes.
But he was able to translate, working with unions and a very different sort of negotiation to negotiating with volunteers and people who chose to be there. And I found that lesson of listening and reflecting to be just a really good foundation. It shifted my perspective and really laid out the leader that I was hoping to emulate and the leader I hoped I would become.
That's such a great story, Susan, because the more I speak with people and the more I reflect on it, I'm coming to the conclusion that actually in leadership, the person that loses its calm first or raises its voice loses as a leader. So that person can never be the leader, because the leader is always calm and in check of his emotions or her emotions, and knows exactly what are the steps and listens to people. He's not the talker of the group, because if you're talking, you're not listening to what is going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't know why we have in our society this skewed view that leaders they're talking and they have no, and there's sometimes you see it especially because the leaders we mostly see are political leaders. You see it in them. They don't, and even we make fun of some of them. They only talk. They don't know this. They do not know reality. They don't understand our world where we're living, and they're coming up with solutions that are just I don't understand why. What sane person thinks like that?
they create their own reality because that's what
Yes,
they want it to be, and then they think they can just bully everybody else into doing what
because they're
they
not
want.
listening. And not listening is really, really tough as a leader, and it will not make you a success. And Susan, since you had such a lovely, lovely story about success, I'm really curious about the story on leadership failure and what lessons can we draw from it.
Ooh, I do have. As I have seen the best in leadership, I have also seen the worst.
We
And
all have.
I refer to my experience as minute leadership.
Minute
He is
leadership.
minute because he micromanaged all of us to the extreme.
Oh my
It
God.
was a company, a software company, that prided themselves on being one of the first virtual companies. This was back around, oh goodness, maybe 2006, 2007.
Oh, early adopter.
Yeah, early adopter. Oh wait, it was 2005. I just got my
Even
years
earlier.
right, 2005. And the company really prided itself on having remote people, and the founders of the company had a great deal of respect, and they were the ones that hired me. And then the structure changed, and I ended up reporting to this gentleman who
Okay.
wanted everybody to perform exactly like he did.
Oh my God.
We had to do it exactly his way, or else it was the wrong way. He wanted all these little clones.
Exactly.
And he was remote, far away. And my guess is he spent a lot of time goofing off because he thought we were goofing off if we
Oh my
weren't
God.
at our desks. IM was the technology back then. And if he IM'd us, instant messaged us, if
Yes.
we didn't immediately respond, he would get on the phone and say, "Where in the heck are you? Why aren't you replying to me?"
Oh my God.
And well, it gets worse.
Even worse
The
than this? Okay.
immediate fact is I was responsible for writing courseware. I had to learn the software, which was difficult, very complex, and then I had to write the training program. So that's, you need to focus and
Exactly.
you can't get distracted or else you can't be productive. So I always thought that an IM meant, well, if you respond in 20 minutes, 15, 20, that would be okay. So you can finish what you're doing. Well,
Same to me. Yes.
he didn't believe that. And it got to the point where he got really angry and he called me. And I said, "I'm really sorry. I was in the bathroom." And so I had to come up with a signal to put on IM to
No.
let him know that I was taking a bathroom break.
Oh my God. That's
I told you
awful.
it got worse. And needless to say, I lasted at that company a total of 4 months.
A long time. A long, long time. That's just the level of
So it was just that
micromanagement.
micromanagement. He couldn't delegate, and managers have to trust their people.
Yes.
And that's why I called him a minute manager versus a micromanager.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I worked remote a big chunk of my career, and I know that from my personal experience, the biggest challenge you have as a manager of a remote team is to make sure they do not burn out faster than they would burn out at an office, because you're always close to the desk. It's in your house. Your work is just there. You get ideas even after the work hours, and you're not
Oh,
going to
and you
say,
work longer.
yes,
So, if you take a half hour in the middle of the day to take a walk around the block and get some air, chances are you're going to be working an hour before everybody woke up and an
exactly.
hour after. Yeah, and I've worked officially. I've had my own company for 20 years. Even before that, I worked for a global software company.
Yes.
And my job, as I was a product manager, and I was uniting people from 20 different organizations. There were 10
Oh,
countries, 5 software products, and 5 functional areas. And I worked in an office, though I didn't have anything to do with the people that sat around me. My job
yes.
was on the
On the
telephone
phone.
because it was really before we had Zoom and WebEx and all of that. And we got so much done. And then after I started my own company, I worked with 2 large global companies. And they asked me to come on board because they had people in 3 or 4 different countries and 3 or 4 different departments who wouldn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And the real reason they hired me, not that they couldn't have done the work, but they wouldn't have spoken to each other. So I was like Switzerland. Everybody would talk to me. And
Ah,
we
nice.
did an amazing amount of work on these 2 projects, and we never met each other. And at one point, we were finally going to get to meet, and I didn't know what color their eyes were. So we were trying to
Ah.
describe ourselves so we would know each other at the airport. And you can see
Oh,
me, I'm 5'2". I have dark curly hair. And this woman who we worked so closely, we really had done stellar work together. The company loved it. It was great. And she thought I was 5'7" with blonde hair and blue eyes. I have no idea what she was thinking. I take it as a compliment,
yeah,
but that's just what she thought I looked like. And
amazing. And I'm really curious because you seem to be able to bridge like cultural differences and make team work, especially like remote teams, divisions spread across the world. And I found out like even subtle cultural shifts create like big problems in teams working together. So how do you make it work? What's your secret sauce?
my secret sauce are 2, I guess 2, maybe 3.
Okay.
I really believe in respect. Everybody deserves
Yes.
respect, whether you are the person who sweeps the office and empties the waste paper baskets. They are working just as hard and they are providing us services so we can do our job. What would
Exactly.
happen if we had to stop and vacuum the floor at 4 in the afternoon? Now I have a home office. I do have to vacuum my own floor.
Yeah. The downside of
um,
working from home.
so, though the people, everybody in an office is all contributing in some way. And so I approach everybody with respect, but I'm also curious. I'm really
Ah,
curious about them, find out if they have children, uh, finding out about different people's culture. I just think is wonderful. And one of the areas I just wish I did better. One of my greatest weaknesses is I don't speak, um, I have difficulty learning foreign languages.
we all do.
And well,
So
your English is fabulous. And
it took me a long time to get to this point.
I would try hard. Years ago, my husband and I took a trip to Europe, and we were fortunate. In most of the tourist areas, people spoke English, and we were able to translate menus. So people would come in a restaurant, other tourists, and they'd see what we were eating, and they said, "We'll have what they're having." So I'm good
Nice.
at reading, but it's the listening. I'm tone deaf, so I'm thinking that might be why I have a problem with the intonation and
Probably, yes.
accents. So what I did try to do is in each language of the people that I worked with, I would learn how to say hello, how are you, goodbye, thank you, and where's the restroom. And many of the people I worked with were Dutch, and they would say prettig weekend, which means have a good weekend. Here in the States, we say TGIF. Thank goodness it's Friday. So, I would try to learn just basic phrases. And, I was working with 5 or 6 languages, but I could say those basic phrases and people appreciate it that I tried at least to say hello and goodbye and thank you. Their English was fabulous. I always admired everybody that I worked with because their English was so strong. And I just wish that I had a better ear for languages. But I'm curious. I like learning about other people, other holidays. I really like the European 6-week vacation in the summer.
Yes, we also like it a lot. And a tidbit that I found out like from a friend from Canada, because he also went to Holland and he was surprised like everybody spoke such amazing English. And he found out that actually it's their second recognized language, English, and they all have to. It's also the national language in English in their country. So everybody speaks it really well because they make a point of it, and they learn it because of the Canadians apparently, because they saved them in, I don't know, the First or Second World War, one of those. And they were so gracious for their support that said everybody's going to learn English from now on.
Wow, what a great story.
Yeah, I also find it like surprising. I didn't know about that one.
Well, but when one of the benefits of our pandemic right now is I find people being much kinder.
Yes, that's true.
And I really believe that people need to be direct and kind. Let people know what you expect and how they could improve, or how they might try to do something differently, but do it with kindness. It goes back to not yelling at folks. You don't want people scared and afraid of you. In fact, one of the things in today's world where technology is moving so fast, I've noticed that people are afraid that they're going to lose their job. So instead of, and very few people get second chances. One of the big buzzwords in the computing community is, fail fast. I believe that's one of the agile principles.
Yes.
And I can't believe that we have to have a very special discipline that says it is okay to fail. What does that say about the rest of our world?
That's such a great point. And it's like, it flipped like a switch in my head, because the businesses, they focus like, let's start project and fail fast at them to see what sticks. But they don't treat humans with the same empathy they have for the projects. Like, let the person fail, but let's see, does he improve? Does he get better? It's not, no, he fails once, that's it.
That's right, you got a reputation. Now, if you're going to fail 4 or 5 times and you don't learn your lessons and move them forward,
that's something else.
Then that's something to consider. But he's becoming one of my heroes, General George Marshall after World War II. He helped to establish NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was all about peace and working together. And what I discovered, I was reading a book about World War II. He believed in education. He said, how can I ask a soldier or anyone to do something that they've never done before and be successful?
Exactly.
And so he started an incredible training program with the U.S. troops and soldiers. And he gave second chances. He really believed in second chances. He didn't often give third chances, but he was very, very generous with his second chances.
And he also gave a second chance to Europe with the Marshall Plan and all the investment and rebuilding the whole of Europe. So for sure, he was okay with the second chances. Thank God we never had to get to the third chance.
Exactly. So, I just think that people in our world today, you do need to be direct, because if you don't know what's expected of you, that was one of my challenges with that horrible manager I had, is he expected us to be just like him. However, he never told us until after we failed, and then he'd belittle us because we weren't just like him. So it's the extremes
Exactly.
that makes that work. And so we live in interesting times. I do think people are learning how to be kinder to each other. I'm not sure in Europe, Brene Brown, I don't know if she's a well-read writer in Europe. What I take from her is her definition of functional teams and
Okay.
dysfunctional teams is that bad things happen. They just do. It's nobody's fault. They just happen.
Yes.
So something, but when these difficult times happen and the project gets off course or something, dysfunctional teams will move away from each other and point fingers and lay blame because they don't want it to be their fault, because they don't want to get fired.
Yeah.
Functional teams come together and figure out how to solve a problem together. So they see it as a challenge to overcome, as opposed to needing to blame somebody before they can think about a solution.
And usually in those situations, if the leader is good, he's going to say the fault is all mine. So let's move forward and find solutions.
Exactly.
So
and
all fingers are pointing at him, so he's marching forward. And that's the whole idea. And with that, Susan, I'm really curious, what's your leadership philosophy?
Well, it kind of one moves into the other. I really believe that leadership is not a solo sport. You can't lead a team of one. And that team of, everybody can't be just like you, that you have little clones that replicate you. So there are type A leaders that are very directive. And when we're in battle, I want the generals to have faith in, they're going to have to stand up and know the situation, and they're going to have to make very quick decisions. That's just
and
being
tough
in
decisions.
Battle.
Yes.
On the other hand, there's type B leaders, and that's a collaborative leader. And I like to be a collaborative leader where you really know yourself, where you're very self-aware, and you know what your weaknesses are. And because you know what your weaknesses are, you look for people on your team who can counterbalance them.
Oh, yeah.
So you're working together to be successful. And so you want a team of people that's very diverse. If they're all just like you, that means you all have the same weakness. And how can you succeed? That's where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So I really believe if you can get a diverse team, and through conversations and getting to know each other and asking a lot of questions, you'll learn what everybody's strengths are, and then you can leverage their strengths, because everybody can make an important impact. And you also get multiple perspectives. So if you're trying to solve a problem, everybody might have some little bit of knowledge that they learned in another job that they can bring. And so if you might combine them. One person may not have the answer, but if you're brainstorming, somebody might be able to say, well, at my last company, we did this, we did X. And somebody else might say, well, our situation is different. So then the next question is, okay, that was successful. How could we adapt that to this situation? And so when you can bring those, that you can facilitate a brainstorming session that involves everybody and everybody's part of the solution, that means everybody owns it. And once you own that solution, you're going to do your best to make it happen, to make it work. And that's kind of where we come back to Lego Serious Play, is when people leave, it's only a 2 to 4 hour session. But after that 2 to 4 hours, people leave and they all share the same goal. They've all bought into it, and they're accountable for the outcome. So that comes back to not blaming, not worrying about firing. You can be accountable when things don't go quite right, when a project, the technology didn't work like you were led to believe. So what can you do to fix it?
Happens all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know if that was in a nutshell, but that's my philosophy.
It was deep. Yeah. And I like, and it all turns back like to respect and being curious and finding out stuff about the people you're working, and that's really important because you're actually building a sort of a family outside your family at the office. So you need to know a lot of stuff about them.
Well, we're with the people we work with often
Yes.
more than we're with our people at home.
Exactly.
It is like a family.
Yes,
it is. It's amazing. I still keep in touch with people I worked with 20 years ago, 25 years
Oh
ago.
yeah. It means you had like a really awesome collaboration and you build strong bonds with them. And I don't have a career as long as yours yet, but I still have like colleagues from past company. In all past companies, I have a couple of colleagues that we stay in touch, not as frequently as I would like. Towards my shame, I should stay more in touch with them, but it's still nice.
Right. And you know what? Even if you've been out of touch, if you can connect with them 10 years later, they're going to be glad. They're going to say, I've been meaning to call you. So they will be glad if you take that action.
And I will after this call. And Susan, for aspiring leaders, what would be your top 3 leadership tips for them?
My top 3. Well, one of the, especially because this is techie leadership, I started my career out as a techie. I worked with AT&T and I designed and implemented integrated voice and data systems.
Oh, serious stuff.
I was a real techie and I really believed that technology would drive business forward. And when I was working for that global software company and getting to know people from all over the world, and I had to bring them all together, we were trying to get a single forward-moving plan. And at that point, we had 20 different plans. And in the middle of that project, I went, oh, it's the people, stupid, me being stupid. And it's the people that are going to drive business forward. And today, technology is changing every 6 weeks, 3 months. We can't keep up with it. And so technology is simply a tool.
Yes.
And it's the people that matter. And so as a leader, if you can show respect, if you can listen really hard and share your resources, get them to understand somebody else that balance leverage their strengths so that everybody recognizes, there's Hans, he does X really well. And there's Gerta, and she does Y really well. So let's put Hans and Gerta together, and together they can be really successful. So if you can respect people, listen really hard, and recognize their strengths so you can leverage those strengths. Obviously you want to help them overcome their weaknesses. But sometimes Hans and Gerta working together, they might help each other. Their strengths balance out and you learn from each other.
Exactly.
And that's the other thing. Leaders, my friend Ken, I got to interview him when I wrote my book. That was the best part. I got to interview people that I really respected as leaders. And what Ken told me is leaders never stop learning. And that goes back to curiosity and listening and discovering people's strengths. And that leaders just don't stop learning. That's the curiosity.
And that's true. That's something that I'm finding out more and more. People that become leaders, they have a hunger for knowledge, to get more and to improve on themselves, and they reflect on their performances and driving it forward. And I really like the idea about building your team in a way that you don't get the same person trying to find clones of of one person to multiply it, but actually building in a way that they each support each other and the sum is greater than the individual parts. And I got that because we're talking about Legos. It's like building, making a Lego constructions, and the difference between having all kinds of different variations in the pieces you can use and having just the same piece but in great quantities. You can build something with it, but it's not going to be something that it's impressive. It will be a little bland.
Right. Or I'll brag on my son. He was trained as a chef, and he's working
Ah,
now for a culinary management consulting company. So they work with restaurants and menus and in
yes.
the food industry. And I asked him to build, because he was helping me practice, I asked him to build how he communicated with his colleagues and how his colleagues communicated with him. And he
Yeah.
has all of his Legos in a big box that he's using as his coffee table in his apartment. And he pulled out all of
Nice.
his Legos and he's grabbing pieces. And he came up with a motorboat that he had from some Lego kit.
Yes.
And he had these little lasers on the front. And he had a little radar thing on the back. And he had
Oh,
some little people in the boat, but he also had a really big polar bear.
really big polar bear.
A
What's with the
polar bear
polar
in the
bear?
middle of a boat in the middle of the ocean, right? And so I asked him to tell me his story. And he said that in their business, they need to know the food trends before they happen. And
Yes,
so that's
hard.
what the little lasers, he said, we move really fast. We're communicating, we're collaborating, we're brainstorming. Everything happens quickly. It's hard to stop and reflect. So they're moving fast for the motorboat. Then they have to keep those lasers out in front of them.
Yes.
And then behind them, but their customers are having to do business now. They are
Yes.
not ready to move way
For
out.
tomorrow. Yes.
So you have to keep an eye on where your customers are today and help get them ready for what's ahead.
And
And
the
then
polar
I said,
bear?
I asked him the polar bear. And he looked, I guess we were doing Zoom. He did look at me. And you might look at your parents the same way. He was like, Mom. The polar bear is the challenge in the room that everybody's refusing to acknowledge.
Ah,
So in the United States, we'll say it's the elephant in the room.
elephant, yes.
But he didn't have an elephant, so he used a polar bear. Well, and that's the whole point. But what he was, and I'm thinking if I asked him 10 minutes before, I mean, he built it in 4 minutes. So really, if I'd asked him 5 or 6 minutes before, he couldn't have told me all of that information.
Amazing. I'm going to
And
use it with
because,
my daughter.
because he built something and then he stepped back to look at what he built, all of a sudden he had the story. And so that's what I find, powerful back to Lego, but also back to your team, to being able to
Yes.
hear their stories and to ask lots of questions and to be curious. And I teach many, many classes and workshops, and I always learn something from each student. So I end the class with
Yes.
a lot more knowledge than I began the class because they each take a different perspective and they bring a different perspective into the classroom.
You should be paying the
And
highest fee
I
of the
should.
class.
I like getting paid. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Susan, since we're talking about learning and leaders always learn, what is the book that had the most profound impact on you?
There was I read it many years ago, and it is called the first book was Crucial Conversations, and that was interesting. But the second book by the same authors were Crucial Collaboration. And then
Ah,
they just republished it and they call it Crucial Accountability. And what
uh-huh.
the book teaches you is how to have those difficult conversations. So even in the office where somebody's going to bully you and they catch you in a moment like where you're in front of a lot of people and they ask you a question that you either don't have the answer for or you don't want to answer in front of all these
Yes.
people. And they make you feel like if you don't answer it, you're really stupid.
Okay. And how do you handle that situation?
Well, what I learned was it was okay not to answer right away. And the tool that I learned was to say, that is a very good point. Could you make an appointment, because I think we need some time to discuss it and I'd like to think about it. Could you make an appointment and we could talk maybe next Wednesday or Thursday and really give your question the attention that it deserves? So you're in front of all these people. You look like a hero. You have made this person, you've elevated him. You haven't said, oh, shut up, you're just trying to make me look bad. And you haven't like bumbled all over, blah, 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 blah. You know, that's what I would do before. And so you have not embarrassed that person in front of the colleagues. And what I've learned is chances are they're not going to call you and make an appointment.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Their goal was to make you look bad. So you took the high road. I learned how to take the high road. And there's several other tips in there. And the accountability is helping people on your team be accountable for their actions.
Yes.
Be accountable for your actions. And my daughter, I'm very proud of her. Somebody said, that's a negative story I'm going to tell you. She's doing great, and I'm very, very proud of her. She's done some fabulous things. One of the lessons that she taught me, she was 3 years old.
3 years old.
And we were trying to get out of the door so she could go to daycare and I could go to work. And she accidentally spilled her milk.
Okay.
Which 3-year-olds will spill their milk. It's not a bad thing, but it was just the wrong time. And I didn't get angry. I didn't scold her. I just sighed. And I was going to grab a paper towel and wipe it up all on my own. And she looked at me. She was so worried about being bad and doing something wrong. She said, Mommy, it's not my fault. And I knew it was an accident. Yeah. And then I looked at her and I said, sweetheart, you're there and I'm here. Whose fault could it be? And she looked at me and she said, Mommy, my hand did it. Yes. And so then all of a sudden we had a lesson to teach. I said, sweetie, your hand is connected to your body and your body's connected to your brain. So if your hand does something, it might be an accident, but you did it. And so at that point, I had to get another piece of paper towel and we had to clean up the mess together. But it was probably worth the 10 minutes that we were late that morning. Because later on, I was in charge of a training center that had 10 trainers in it. The whole region had 20. I was in charge of the 26 trainers. And every Friday, we had to take down the equipment for the course we were teaching that week and get the equipment installed for the class we were teaching the next week. And I just remember, it was Friday, they were tired, they wanted to go home, and then they started blaming something or somebody. And I just looked up at them and I said, your hand didn't do it. And somebody, not the trainer that was being obnoxious, but somebody else, I said, you have to be accountable. You need to be accountable for your actions. I'm not going to get angry at you, but just be accountable. Take responsibility and help solve the issue. It doesn't matter who caused it. It only matters who resolves it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just think, when something just happens, I get angry when people are not accountable. It's like your hand didn't do it. As long as you're accountable and take responsibility, then it's okay. Let's just move forward. Let's figure out, was it an accident? Did it just happen? Did maybe you didn't receive information in time. Do we need to go back and figure out why the other department didn't get it to you when they said
Yes.
they get it to you? But you can explain. And so Carrie Patterson, and he has 3 other authors, if people look for crucial accountability, I think it's a great book to help you through challenging times when you're working with other people. You spend a lot of time listening and a lot of time as a manager. How can you help other people take responsibility? What can you say that neutralizes the situation and gains a positive output? And letting not just you controlling it, but letting other people control their actions, because we can only control what we choose to do. And
Exactly.
choice, we all have a choice. And so we can choose how we react to a certain situation. So when a leader gives their people and the ability and, enables them to make choices, then everybody, it's win-win.
It is. It sure is. And a point that I would like to make, and I hope you agree with it, is you have to start with yourself being accountable for the fact that if your team is not accountable for their actions, it means that probably you snapped at them and they're afraid because they got trained by other bosses or former managers that if they make a mistake, the manager is going to get really angry. So you have to be accountable for the fact that you have to show them that it's okay. You're not going to lose your mind at each mistake or situation. And it's okay for them to show that, okay, they made a mistake, how we can fix it. So it starts at the top.
And you have to, in the States, we say it's walking the talk.
Yes.
Just because you say
Exactly.
it, if you're not doing it, everybody, then you lose all your credibility. You're no longer authentic. They don't believe what you say.
For sure.
And so you have to really model it. And that's why, I wrote my book, Creating a Greater Whole, and I'm starting to work on a new project called Expert to Excellence. Because
Awesome,
so
Susan.
many...
Please let me know where people can go and find out more and tell a little more about your books.
Sure. Well, the first one, I'll just show you. I know we're not visual. The first one, you can get them both on Amazon. Creating a Greater Whole, you can order off of Amazon. I can direct you to the publishing website. If you go to my website, I have a 20% discount I can give you.
And your website is?
If you go to riverbirchgroup.com, that's R-I-V as in Victor, E-R, G as in George, R-O-U-P as in Paul.com. And there's a 20% discount code that you can use when you check out at the publisher site. It is available on Amazon. And then the other one is Turning Ideas into Impact. And it's a consolidation. There are 15 of us, 16 that contributed to this anthology. So I have one chapter that I was responsible for, and you can get that on Amazon. If you look up Susan G. Schwartz, you'll come up with my 2 books, and you'll be able to find both of them on Amazon, or go to my website and I'll give you links to both of them.
And I'll put the links in the show notes so people can more easily find your website and the books. And it has been a pleasure having you on the show, Susan. I learned so much, and it's been
thank
true
you.
Pleasure.
This has been such a great conversation. I hope we can keep in touch after this.
For sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That was today's episode. Tune in daily. Rate, like, subscribe, and share, please. Oh, you can find further info and materials in the show notes on techyleadership.com, including links to the guest book recommendations.